Are we approaching the end of civilization as we know it? Do we want to be victims or champions? Hi, my name is Steve. Welcome to Awake with Steve, where I discuss issues related to these topics, maybe even answer some of them a little bit. Primarily, I talk about my anxieties, what keeps me up at night, what I wake up to sometimes, and just worrying about it. So, this is part 3 of a 4-part series. This episode, I'm going to talk a bit about global warming. Billions will become refugees. Miami will be flooded. New Orleans will disappear. Right? Makes great headlines. And certainly the different news medias and social medias have made great use of this type of visualization. That's not the way it's going to happen, though, probably. It's going to be a much slower, longer developing process. Or so my initial explorations in this area thought. Now, I have come upon some papers recently which would indicate that may not be true. There may be a much faster process coming into play. I'll talk more about that at the end of the video. But talking about the media and dramatic visualizations, we're starting to experience, and I'm starting to see in the headlines now, some of the more insidious symptoms of global warming. We have droughts. Okay, droughts lead to famine. Famine leads to refugees. Famine also leads to wars, revolutions, etc. We have heat. There are already places in the world where for a significant number of days out of the year, you simply don't go outside to work. You work at night. Okay? It just gets too hot. You will get sick, majorly sick, and possibly even die if you spend too much time in the heat doing anything physical. There are days in Phoenix now where you will get, maybe not, 1 or 2, 3 days where it's there. You're just advised not to go outside. It's too hot. And we talk about New Orleans disappearing. The lower Mississippi River, where in the Mississippi Delta, where New Orleans is, are forecasted to become major areas where there will be significant number of days where it's too hot to work outside. If you spend more than a few hours outside, you run the risk of dying. It'll be that serious. And then you get your rainstorms, your windstorms, thunderstorms with 8 inches of rain in 24 hours, major flooding as a result. These are all happening now. These have been getting gradually worse for the last 20 or 30 years. Actually, if you really want to carry it back through since, 1800s. But that also is part of the insidious effects of global warming, in that initially the changes are very gradual. And by the time you actually notice that there are serious problems, you've gotten away from the flatter part of the curve, and global warming is starting to accelerate. I don't think it's an exponential acceleration. I don't think it's that fast, but it's nonlinear. Effects compound. There are feedbacks which occur, which will speed up the process. Maybe more like a step-like process. But that's part of the insidiousness of it, because these are all just normal events. It's a little bit worse than usual, but, just normal stuff. It's a normal deviation, except it's not. And it's used, again, by social media, news media, to kind of play down the whole concept of global warming until recently, when things have started getting more serious. So, So it's going to be what I would call an existential crisis. We will have to make some decisions that will affect our abilities as a civilization to continue. If we don't make them, if we keep going the way that we're going without doing anything, even doing what little we are doing right now, there's a very good probability that our civilization will end, that all civilizations on the planet will end. We will simply lose the capacity to utilize resources in the way that we need to survive as a civilization. Now, if we go through and we can actually solve the whole issue of global warming, and we get us back to where we think we should be as far as global warming goes, take us back a couple of 100 years or so, get the carbon dioxide down. That, I think, would also change us as a civilization. We would no longer be a consumer of resources on the planet without regard to consequences, which is pretty much what we've been until the last 40 years, and we started worrying about it. But we would be a custodian of the planet, a guardian, if you will, where we will utilize the resources in such a way that we minimize our impact on the planet while allowing us to continue living at a reasonably comfortable standard of living. Maybe even more comfortable than we're living now, although that's really hard to imagine. So that's where we're kind of going with that as far as civilizational changes go. There's lots of room in between for how things will change. And we're probably going to change in some manner between those extremes. So the issue I spoke to earlier about maybe sea level rise might be happening faster than anticipated is a couple of papers that have come out. One from James Hansen, scientist who initially stood before Congress and told them that global warming was an issue back in the 80s and 90s. He's come out with a new paper, new research that indicates that the sea surface temperature, ocean surface temperatures are rising much faster than expected. And if he looks at the energy balance, the amount of energy coming into the planet Earth and the amount of energy leaving it, and sees a very serious discrepancy between the two, which means there's a lot of energy being deposited on the planet, much more than was anticipated by most current models. Also, to aggravate that more, there's been an increase in methane entering the atmosphere. Methane levels are getting larger, and the nature of the levels have changed. Earlier, it was a lot of methane that was being put into the atmosphere was from oil projects, oil drilling, natural gas, etc. That has changed, and it's looking more like the methane is coming from natural resources, swamps, cattle. Okay, although cattle is not, I'll go into that in another episode. I'm getting into too much details here. It's interesting. I have not done enough research to know the validity of it at this point. It's just a note at this point, an asterisk. So that's about, if you want to get a head start on that, I'll be going into that more. It's probably be a short episode, but if you Google termination event, glacial termination events, you can start reading up on what some people think might be happening at this point. So let's see here. So that's where we stand on that. That's I'm bringing this to a close. My next episode will be hopefully much cheerier than the prior two episodes, than this episode or the prior one. I want to talk more about what we're doing to alleviate or to ease or to cure various aspects of my anxieties, global warming, and all of the other train wrecks. So we will continue tomorrow probably, but in the next episode. Have a good day.